All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Yeah, what up, everybody? Welcome. I know, I feel it too. Special energy. I know it's a wild, wild place we find ourselves in. Why does this camera keep drifting down a little bit, Tony? Do you have any thoughts on that? Tony's with us on the big, the Magic Mark Thompson Show.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah.
Maybe I bumped it yesterday. We can blame me. I bumped it yesterday.
No, I readjusted it since you bumped it. So there's I don't think I can blame you. Some weird haunting going on in the studio. But very cool. Kim has made it in from her many shows. She does a lot of shows on YouTube. I fully expect an unboxing show or some kind of other show to come together.
Oh, yeah.
In addition to the many shows that she already does. She's got a 3-hour, 3-show block, right? How many hours is that? Actually, 5 hours on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So anyway, Kim, it's great to have you in the mix too.
Kim, how are you?
We do have a lot of people also passing through our lives today. Kim, are we doing the Talk to a Rando today? I've lost track, Marcel. Oh, yeah, we are talking to a Rando today. If you missed it yesterday, it's a new segment where we actually give you the opportunity to join us, which I think will only elevate the discourse in this show. And all you have to do to join us there is send us an email, themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. Tell us who you are. Tell us kind of what you want to talk about, and we will include you. And today we're including someone who, and again, this is kind of a brief visit from whomever it is, but who wrote to us and just made it out of Hawaii right before these tragic events unfolded. So it was quite by accident, but we'll talk to him, I think, later this half hour, right, Kim?
Yeah, I think just in a few minutes. Absolutely.
Yeah, Kim is, honestly, she is so helpful and has really moved into an increasing logistical role on this show when it comes to guests. And so that's why I ask Kim often, like, what's happening again? Because I'm really grateful to her for managing all of that. But anyway, we'll talk to him first, so it'll be Talk to a Rando. And then we'll have a chance to visit with Jefferson Graham Tech Thursday. I saw him on Nikki's show. I'll be honest with you on Jefferson Graham. I thought he did a great job on Nikki's show. I'm a big fan of Jefferson Graham, as you know.
Yeah.
And I usually like to save these comments that are a little edgier for when he visits, because I think he doesn't really know what to do with them. But I'm thinking he's overexposed a little bit. Yeah, he does a lot of stuff with Nikki. Then he comes over here. You know what I'm saying? I'm saying, hey, Jeff, I love you, but I think you kind of did a full. I watched the whole thing, Jefferson Graham on Nikki's show, and I loved it. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love him, okay? I'm thinking, like, what's left? You've kind of done it. You've got your show. You did your thing on Nikki's show. Now you want to come over to my show? I don't know about that. So I'm reviewing it. I'll be honest. You're kind of he's on probation, I would say.
He says something different on each show.
All right.
So there's different content. And how can an extra conversation with Jefferson Graham ever be bad?
Oh, don't defend him like that. That is
somebody has to.
Oh, my God.
I mean, listen to yourself. What are you saying?
I'm grateful to Jeff. This is what is hard for me. My personal love for Jefferson Graham, if I can use that word, is substantial. He helped me and held my hand as I ran into challenges dealing with YouTube on this show. So I love Jefferson Graham personally.
This is the thanks he gets. Yeah.
Yeah. And then
Kim, how are you?
And then the professional part of Jefferson Graham, I also love. Like, I love his pictures. I love his tips. But I'm just thinking, I don't know, maybe I just felt like he was playing around on me when I watched the Nikki thing. It might be jealousy. I mean, I'm not above jealousy.
Betrayed.
Yeah, okay. I felt a little betrayed, right? I mean, it's...
Do you know who I am?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm kind of a big deal.
Yeah, thank you. I am kind of a big deal. I brought you to this whole place, Jefferson. And all of a sudden, I tune in, and you're everywhere with all the people I introduced you to.
Why are you yelling?
I think
You need to breathe. It's okay.
I'm
It's gonna
feeling
be okay.
hurt a little bit, but
There's
look,
enough love to go around, my friend.
all right. That's a good way to think of it.
Yeah.
Now, in addition to Jeff, David Katz, the brilliant former federal prosecutor, will be here after 11 o'clock. We'll talk about a bunch of stuff. There are the fake elector cases. They all pled not guilty. Then you have the Trump cases that are stacking up. There are more Trump charges coming out of Georgia, as you're well aware. We'll speak to David Katz about all of that. His legal mind is, I think, unparalleled, and also his predictions have been 100%. If you're new to the show, this is a legal source that you must listen to, and he'll be here in hour 2.
Can I tell you something that bothers me about the fake electors? Lately, I've been reading stories about, the what happened there. And the stories are written, they call them alternate electors. No, they're not alternate electors. Alternate sounds like an alternate on a jury panel. It's not an alternate, it's fake. They were fake. They're not alternates.
They were
drives
completely
me nuts every time I see that. Yeah.
It should drive you nuts. You're right to be. You're right to be angered by that. It's BS.
Yeah.
And it's BS that almost, really, and I know what I'm about to say, people are going to go, oh, well, how could this is an exaggeration. Really almost brought the country down.
Yeah.
I mean, the representative democracy, was really almost toppled. They had schemes that came close. So as long as this ends justify the means attitude exists, it's scary. So anyway, we'll talk about it. But you're right. That's a ridiculous kind of way
Thank
to
you for
refer to it.
validating that for me. I appreciate that.
Yes, well, it's that's what I'm here for. I mean, again, I'm...
Do you know who I am?
Exactly, I'm a validator.
I'm kind of a big deal.
I did morning TV in Los Angeles this morning.
Oh, you're fancy.
Well, I mentioned it because I think we should. Didn't I do it once before and we went over it, like together?
Yeah.
We kind of went over it, like the
We played
Zapruder
we
film
rolled
or
the tape.
something.
Yeah.
So we'll do the same thing. I don't know if we'll do it tomorrow, but maybe on Monday we'll go over it. Because I'll tell you, I think some things went well, and then some things I felt like I didn't feel like I stuck the landing so well,
Yeah.
And I tend to be really a tough critic, as you're aware, really about my own work or my own. So, and it's all extemporaneous, right? And you're kind of going, oh, do they want me to do this? So, and you want to roll with it. You want to be funny, but you also want to get viewers to the show.
Right.
So I will, I don't know if I can grab it. It'll show up. I can find it on YouTube somewhere, right? The KTLA Morning News. Tony, we can find it from this morning? I mean, not today, but for tomorrow.
I was kind of looking for it now. I didn't know, so I'm going to see what I can find.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, I mean,
Thanks, Tony.
I think that we'll find it, and then when we do, I promise you we'll go over it. And I also promise you I will be merciless about myself. I promise you I will be brutal on myself. So don't worry. I don't go easy on myself.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I did that this morning, so I've been up since you're always worried you're going to sleep too late on those morning shows and somehow miss so I've been up, every couple of hours, thinking, oh my God, I've got to get up now in a couple of hours. So I'm a little behind I'm counting on you, Kim, to keep us on track. And I just want to mention Belinda's also going to be here. Belinda Waymouth with It's the Planet Stupid, the planet on fire, literally. So we'll do that in the second hour. Also. So let's get started.
The Mark Thompson Show.
What's going on in Hawaii is unprecedented and awful.
36
the images,
people.
36 people have died in this catastrophic wildfire conflagration that has, and you're seeing images now. There are wildfires in Maui. And sadly, these infernos are being blown by these winds that come off of a hurricane. And because of the winds, as you're well aware, there's really no way. Look, this is from a passing aircraft. There's no way to beat back those flames. Wind-driven flames, almost impossible to knock down. We know that firsthand in California. But Kim, you've been reporting on this all morning, and you're very close to Hawaii as well. You've got a rich history in Hawaii, so maybe you can bring us up to date.
Yeah, what we just saw there was Lahaina before the fire. If you go back, that's the way it looked. It doesn't look like that now anymore. Here's what it looks like now. Yeah.
So that's
So
complete destruction, it looks like to me.
they say it's been wiped off the face of the map. Yeah. You see maybe one or two structures remaining, more than 270 buildings burned. And that's just on Maui. There's other fires burning on the Big Island as well. Look at the burned out vehicles. And yeah, it's just awful. More than, again, at least 36 people are dead. They're still going to be finding probably more, they say. There's still recovery efforts underway right now. The fire's still going, fueled by these strong winds. The fire, again, also on the Big Island, entire blocks of homes and businesses damaged in Lahaina town. Tourists from across the world stranded at airports looking for a flight out. We did hear from Walter, who is a part of this show, and Walter is safe. So that's good news. And we also heard from another one of our listeners that happened to be vacationing in Maui, and she and her family are safe as well. So that's what we want to hear. Former President Obama, speaking about this deadly wildfire, he went on social media saying it's tough to see these images coming out of Hawaii. He's called it a place so special to so many of us. And he said he and Michelle are thinking of those who have lost loved ones. The president, of course, born and spent a significant portion of his childhood in Hawaii. He is recommending a certain charity. Again, I'll have a list of charities that are legitimate and good places to donate if you're so inclined to do that for the people of Hawaii.
Yeah, the charitable efforts and, of course, the government efforts now. You saw that officially the government will essentially reimburse for any expenses associated with fighting the fire. It'll reimburse Hawaii. And that's a big deal, because these fires are expensive. And they say that federal officials are surveying the damage and looking at Lahaina and all the fires on Maui. And they will continue to not only assist, but they will put together a plan to help with the money associated with this. It's a brutally expensive and grim effort to fight the fires and to restore that area affected by the fires. And again, this Hurricane Dora, it's hundreds of miles away from the islands, but it produces these winds. Yeah. And the wind gusts have hit about 80 miles an hour. There have been sustained winds a little less than that. But you just don't really have a chance. So there's shelters set up, and FEMA is approving the state's disaster declaration, as I said. That could really help with the firefighting costs. But the human toll and the toll to so much of the beauty of Hawaii is clearly devastating.
And I don't
We're showing
know
pictures now for those listening. We're showing pictures now on YouTube.
I don't know what the cleanup will look like, but I'm thinking that they'll probably have to start with the areas directly on the coast first, because you don't want rains to come and have all of the chemicals and stuff associated with building materials washed into the sea. And Hawaiians care about the ocean. It is part of the culture and part of what makes Hawaii amazing. And so they want to protect the coral reefs and the sea turtles and the sea life there. So to have, all this debris and ash floating in the ocean, I think we're going to see cleanup there as well.
Well, I'm hopeful that they can get those efforts underway soon. And frankly, I'm hopeful that they can get these fires completely contained soon. Yeah. Even as we look at the devastation, the fires continue. Well, related to the fires, we have a listener viewer who is going to join us, having just left Hawaii. And it just is an odd and eerie coincidence that it does coincide with our new segment, which you, the listener and viewer, regardless of when you're listening or how you're listening or how you're viewing or when you're viewing, can be part of. It's a new segment we call Talk to a Rando.
The Mark Thompson Show presents Talk to a Rando.
You talking to me?
Where you, a random listener or viewer, joins the show.
Who are these people?
Let's find out with your host, Mark Thompson.
Connie Olson, and it is a big pleasure of mine to welcome the very first rando that we will speak with, and he is newsworthy. How about it for Jim?
Hey.
What's up with you, Jim? Look at you.
I got my sticker from Maui.
Oh, you got your Maui sticker?
Maui. I literally was in Maui, and we were leaving, and I noticed a few things as I was trying to leave on a Monday. One, my flight got canceled, but that was a mechanical failure. So we were actually stuck there till Tuesday. When we woke up on Tuesday, there was cell phones outages coming in and out. I was going from my 5G normal down to 3G. I started seeing smoke in the air, started smelling a little bit of smoke. There was some very high winds. There were actual palm trees snapping over onto the freeway. So already people trying to leave normally were waking up to power outages in their hotel rooms. So they couldn't actually check out. They couldn't get out of the parking lot. They had to lift the gate physically to move the car out from underneath.
Wow.
And it was already a weird, eerie Tuesday as I got to the airport to get my normal flight out at 2 o'clock. I'm starting to see that people, as they were landing, were checking their phone message and freaking out because the fires had already started. The power outages has gotten to a point where they were canceling all of the many different resorts on the west side. And then not only were they being canceled, they weren't given a way to get off the island. They literally got a message that says, try to go home. That was their entire message. So you had hundreds of people start already piling at the airport at noonish trying to get off the island because there's no other place for 4,000 people to go on an island that's small.
My God. So you just coincidentally got out of that area right as everything was coming to pieces.
Yes. And I had friends that were leaving that area and normally would take 45 minutes to go from the west side to the airport, maybe an hour. It was taking them 3 hours plus. So they left at like 9 and they got there at 1 for their 2 o'clock flight out. And they were one of the lucky ones that had a car with gas because then the gas line started filling up. And I think 2 of the gas stations ran out of gas by like noon.
That's extraordinary, man. Absolutely extraordinary. Why do you, was it a vacation on your part or do you do business down there? Why were you there?
Actually, personally, I was there for a friend, the one that was with us. They had gotten a free extra timeshare slot. So we wanted our kids to bond. They were in the ocean the day before. We noticed the ocean was picking up to the point that our kids would run in the wave and they would throw them back on the beach. So the waves already on Sunday were so high that a 50-pound 7-year-old kid is being thrown back on the beach. Not just little bit, but it was hilarious at first, but we're noticing it's getting a little scary, a little higher, a little faster. So that was just Sunday. But by Tuesday, when we were leaving, the waves are so high, there was already warnings not to let your kids go on the beach.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I'll remind everybody, the waves are really fed by winds. So you've got those same winds that are driving those fires are driving those waves. Wow, what a dramatic story. I mean, seriously, you were there as it was all falling apart, as you say, as the power outages were occurring, as travelers were stranded, as there was a panic, frankly, as to what to do.
Right.
And this is unprecedented in that area. I mean, last thing I'll say, and it's so cool of it, Jim, I know you, and I'm seeing it in the chat, you show up on some other shows too, and this is my first interaction with you, but it's fun to have you kick off our Talk to a Rando segment. It's just a fact of Hawaii that there is a wildfire season there too, but it's nothing on this scale. I mean, it really isn't. And it's the odd truth that the brush is so dry, the fuel is so tender dry, and this hurricane is in the area close enough to produce these conditions that those two elements together produced what we're seeing now and the devastation that we've witnessed. So,
right. And the dry brush isn't just the only thing, it's how close everything is. You know, these are houses built in 1950. They don't really have standards of 3 feet apart. They don't keep the dry brush, 100 feet away. It's more like you could just park on it kind of thing, right next to your car, right next to your house. So what was quaint about those towns is kind of their own death trap in a way, because you can't get out of it. Once one street gets caught on fire, you almost can't get out of that neighborhood anymore.
So well put. Hey, I love that you joined us. Thank you for being part of things. Appreciate your contributions to the show, and great story of getting out. I'm glad you did get out. Thanks, Jim. We'll see you again. All right. Jimbo, everybody. How about it? Yeah. And that is Talk to a Rando for today.
Join us next time when maybe you can say,
I've been touched by greatness.
On Talk to a Rando, only on The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah, if you want to be part of Talk to a Rando, random listener, you need no special qualifications. You simply need to reach us at themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. Just tell us who you are and what your story is, whatever it is. Maybe you want to weigh in on political corruption. Maybe you want to talk San Francisco politics. Maybe you are angry about the A's leaving Oakland. It doesn't matter what you want to speak of. We're happy to put you on. And maybe you want to take me on something. That's fine, too. You know, I welcome a spirited exchange. You can, again, email us at themarkthompsonshow@gmail.com. And, of course, you see there, lower third, all the information, and to support the show, themarkthompsonshow.com. So, all of that happening, and
The Mark Thompson Show.
Robbie Robertson passed away. He was really the leader of the band, this primary songwriter for the band, collaborated with Bob Dylan. He wrote the song The Weight, The Night They Drove Old Dixie Down. There you go. You see it. Up on Cripple Creek, Robbie Robertson. The band is, famous probably for Dylan, I would suggest, in large measure, but they lasted 8 years after the release in 1968 of their first album. But they, as Rolling Stone notes, forever changed the pop culture landscape, releasing brilliant Americana music at the peak of the psychedelic movement. Their first album sent shockwaves through the industry, they note in Rolling Stone, inspiring Eric Clapton to break up Cream, the Beatles to attempt their own stripped-back project with Let It Be. And a pair of young British songwriters named Elton John and Bernie Taupin to begin writing and recording their own material.
What?
Yeah. Robbie Robertson took on the role as the group's leader, writing the majority of their songs and pushing them forward when substance abuse issues and infighting threatened the existence of the band. And it was also his decision, they note in Rolling Stone, to pull the plug on the group in 1976 when he couldn't take it anymore. That set the stage for their legendary farewell concert, The Last Waltz. The Last Waltz was made into a movie, I believe. Google this. I think it was Martin Scorsese who did the movie. Who did The Last Waltz? Who directed it? The road has taken a lot of the great ones, Robbie Robertson said at the time. Hank Williams, Buddy Holly, Otis Redding, Janis, Jimi Hendrix, Elvis. It's an impossible way of life. And he was one of Bob Dylan's key collaborators. He played guitar with Dylan before he formed the band. He's from Toronto, born to a Native American mother and Jewish father. He was fascinated by music from a young age. He said, I've been playing guitar for so long, I can't remember when I started. I guess I got into rock and roll like everybody else. There's a picture of the band, Tony. If you scroll down, you'll see a picture of the band, or Kim. I don't know who's putting that up there.
It's Tony.
Levon Helm, you know, the other members of the band, I know it's weird with all the pop-ups. Anyway, not important, but what is important is this guy who contributed so much to the birth of a movement within rock and roll. And Robbie Robertson will be missed. Again, Robbie Robertson passes away at age 80.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It's sad because we're on YouTube. We can't play any of the music because we'll get copyright strikes. But nonetheless, very important word. Breaking news. I have breaking news.
Oh.
The Mark Thompson Show.
49ers CEO is being sued for alleged insider trading. Kim McAllister is going to tell us about it.
Would you like me to tell you about that right now?
Yeah, I do. He's 42 years old. I think it's always great if you can own a franchise or two and be a super rich guy when you're only 42.
Yeah.
And all of these lawsuits, all of them, 2 lawsuits connected to his role with the board of Chegg. That's an educational company in Santa Clara.
Yeah,
so I guess,
apparently there was a situation with Chegg where the kids college students were cheating on online tests. And supposedly
is a situation.
Yeah.
The people sitting on the board covered it up. And so the stock prices went up. They were covering up this cheating scandal. And then when the stock price hit, I don't know, $113 a share in February, which, by the way, it's currently trading at less than $11. When it hit its high mark, the allegations are that
Let me guess, they dumped it.
20,000 shares, dumped it at artificially inflated prices, made $1.4 million off the sale of 20,000 shares.
It's a wild idea, but it just might work.
It worked for a while, I guess, huh?
It did. And so now York and other directors of Chegg are accused of concealing the company's role in helping the college students cheat on these tests. And York is facing 2 lawsuits connected to his role with the board of Chegg, which is a Santa Clara based company. So Jed York busted.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he'll be a little preoccupied as he watches the Niners play this season. He became the president of the Niners in 2008, served on the Chegg board for the past 10 years. He's made $4.9 million profit on sales of the company's stock in that time, according to the Chronicle. Pretty wild. Yeah. So that's the latest on insider trading allegations against Jed York. Gosh, when is it enough money? Never, apparently, is the answer.
That's what you wonder. I mean, here's a guy who's loaded, right? I mean, you don't know someone's financial situation really intricately, but you would think a guy like this, who is, I believe he's the owner of the 49ers. I'm just saying, like, 1.4 million, that was worth it to you? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's what I've talked about before on this show, that there's a quality when you're flying at that altitude in life that you can do what you want without consequence. And you see it a lot. We talk about it a lot in relation to Donald Trump and what he tries to do. And that's an extreme example as you mix politics with wealth. Yeah. But politics and wealth are mixed, you know, and the truth is that
Saudi Arabia pays cash.
Yeah, and the reality is that as you feel as though there are no real consequences you pay for anything you do, I think you try to get away with more. And that's one of the issues we have. I'll give you another example of how politics and cash wash together, and I'll do it right now.
The Mark Thompson Show.
You remember the derailment of the train, was it in East Palestine, remember?
Yeah, Ohio, yeah.
Right. Brutal, brutal derailment with all of that incinerated chemical going all through that community. What was revealed in all of that was the length of the train exceeding that which was really safe. The number of staffers on the train, you'll recall, was, I believe it was 3. One of them was a trainee. That was also not safe. And the cry from everyone, Democrats and Republicans, we must get a hold of regulation. You know, I've always said regulation is oftentimes protection. When they talk about got to get these burdensome regulations off of us, those are protections. There are consumer protections in place for banking and for chemical manufacturers, and for transporting toxic chemicals, there are or were regulations that were clearly insufficient. And you'll remember through the whole thing, I'll just kind of remind you, they were rolled back under the last administration. But I think this is Democrats and Republicans together sharing responsibility for where we are with the transport of these toxic chemicals through all of these different communities with minimal regulations on it. Now, after that accident, there was all of this drama about we're going to step forward and we're going to change it. Well, the company that manufactured the toxic chemicals that were released and incinerated in the wake of the East Palestine, Ohio train derailment this winter gave $2 million to the primary Senate GOP super PAC as bipartisan rail safety legislation stalled in Congress. The manufacturer, Occidental Petroleum, has been lobbying on rail and tank car safety, and its lobbying group, the American Chemistry Council, which, by the way, also donated $250,000 to the main House GOP super PAC, had pushed for changes that weakened the bill in committee. The railroad legislation introduced in the immediate aftermath of the East Palestine disaster was once seen as the first real shot at imposing new regulations on the railroad industry. Now, on this 6-month anniversary of that toxic accident, even what's left of the watered-down bill doesn't look like it has Republican votes that would pass it in the Senate. And if you trace back the series of events, it gets back to money. On May 10th, J.D. Vance, he's the Republican from Ohio. Senate Commerce, Science, and Transportation Committee Chair Maria Cantwell, she's the Democrat from Washington. They proposed comprehensive amendments to the rail safety legislation. Vance had originally co-authored it. I'll remind you, he's a Republican. She's a Democrat. One of the amendments delayed by 3 years the requirement that shippers replace old tank cars that are vulnerable to punctures with upgraded cars. So, great idea, but let's not do it for a few years. Mm-hmm. Federal regulators had recommended that the 2025 deadline include, in this original bill, be included, but chemical and rail supply industry lobbyists pushed for a delay. Occidental then donated $2 million in June to the Senate Leadership Fund. That's the main super PAC for Senate Republicans. The Senate Leadership Fund spent $32 million to help elect J.D. Vance last fall, so it's easy to find the trail of breadcrumbs back to the big donors. Occidental funneled $5.5 million to the committee, making it the super PAC's largest corporate donor. So with all of this money pouring into legislators, it was only a matter of time before things got watered down and ultimately delayed. It is just another example of money and politics coming together in all the awful ways that we know it does. The classifications of what toxic chemicals go into these various cars, you'll recall the kind of coupling. Remember the coupling? They were using Civil War coupling there. There's so much of rail infrastructure and transportation of these lethal chemicals that has to be regulated. And yet money delays it or sidelines it completely.
Did you say from the Civil War?
Yeah, the technology used, as I recall, the technology used to couple the trains, the train cars, needed to be upgraded and was scheduled to be upgraded because of an Obama administration change demanding that. It was new regulation. Right. But with the Trump administration, they rolled that back. And the actual technology that's used to connect these cars, I believe, dates back to the Civil War. Which is, yeah, exactly. It's crazy. But that's the latest. As we talk about, money and the wealthy class getting what they want, that's the corporate business class getting what they want. And it sucks. But those are the realities.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I want some news from Kim. Then I want some stuff from Jefferson Graham related to technology and some of his great stories from the road. And he crashes in some flea bag motel. I don't know if he's going to some dive bar, picking somebody up, dragging them back to that flea bag motel. I got a whole narrative in my head. But we'll talk to Jeff next. Are you poised to go forward, Kim?
I am poised and ready, sir.
All right. Okay. Smash the like button if you would be so kind if you're watching on YouTube, regardless of when you're.
With your iron rod.
Smash it like a boss. Come on now.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
It's a thumbs up. Cost you nothing. Smash it hard.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
You know the drop that Jeff hates? Oh, he hates this drop. If you don't know it, stay tuned because I'm going to pound him with it. You know it. Once you tell me you don't like it, it's coming at you hard.
I mean, you put the future of his appearances on the Mark Thompson Show at risk.
Oh, that's right. I totally forgot about that.
You're pounding him with the drops he despises.
Our relationship could be in trouble.
I feel like you're antagonizing him today.
I feel like I am too. But I think he was the antagonizer. I'm the antagonizee.
No, I think you're the one that needs the timeout.
Why are you yelling?
Chit, chit, chit. You need a timeout.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Oh, yeah. On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. We're going to start, though, with the wildfires in Hawaii, of course. Here's a picture of a church that burned in Lahaina town. And here's what we know. The wildfires destroying homes and businesses, displacing hundreds of families. As a matter of fact, some people in Hawaii are asking tourists, please leave. And if you have something booked, please cancel it because the hotels may be needed to house all the people displaced from the fires. Burn and smoke inhalation victims are packing hospitals on Maui. The death toll from the fires just on Maui is at 36. But more bodies likely to be found as recovery efforts continue. The fire's still burning in some areas, and there are also fires on the Big Island of Hawaii. President Biden, meanwhile, issuing a major disaster declaration for the state of Hawaii. The move frees up additional federal funding for disaster relief. The president is also ordering all available federal assets to support the response, and that includes the Coast Guard and the Navy's Third Fleet. They are sending helicopters to help fight the flames in Hawaii. 5 Americans detained in Iran are going to be released through what they're calling a pretty rare prisoner exchange with the United States. So this is the prison where they're being held. But in return, the United States releasing an undisclosed number of Iranian prisoners, and they'll grant access to about $6 billion in Iranian assets currently blocked under U.S. sanctions. That in order to get these 5 Americans out of an Iranian prison. The Americans have been imprisoned on unsubstantiated charges of spying. I can say that. And so, yeah, now they're coming home. And this is something that their families have been fighting for quite some time. 2 former
How long
presidents.
Were they in Iran?
They were in Iran.
4 years, I thought. I saw.
I thought it was 5. Was it?
Oh, yeah.
4? There are 5
Multiple
Americans.
5 Americans.
And they've, that doesn't say how many years they've been, but they've been there for years. We know that. And there's
time.
5 of them that are coming home. Yeah, $6 billion deal. So there you go. The former president, of course, is still on the hot seat. And the Justice Department is now proposing a January start date for the trial in the former President Trump's election interference case. In a court brief filed yesterday, Special Counsel today it was filed, Special Counsel Jack Smith proposed the trial start January 2nd. Prosecutors also estimate the trial will take 4 to 6 weeks. Trump facing 4 federal charges in connection to his alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. The defense will also submit a proposed start date, with the judge determining the calendar
Yes,
for
the
trial.
12th of never. Are you available then? That's our start date. We're really busy next year.
That's the tactic, isn't it? It's delay, delay, delay. And so, you know, you can bet that when the defense comes back with their trial date, it's not going to be in January.
Yeah, exactly.
I have a busy week.
Yeah, right. How about the following week?
I have a busy
No, that's also a busy week. Okay.
Yeah, okay. Well, can't stave it off forever, but it'll be interesting to see the trial begin as kind of presidential politics really move into full swing, right? Let's talk about AI and presidential politics, because Democratic and Republican commissioners, of course, have differing views over the Federal Election Commission looking at new rules related to artificial intelligence. The Democratic commissioner is calling AI a topic very timely and important. The Republican commissioner expressing doubts about whether the FEC can address the use of AI in presidential campaigns.
Yeah, the Federal Election Commission, right? Yeah.
Yes. FEC. Yeah, but it's interesting. We'll see how this works. I don't know about AI in election campaigns. Haven't we had enough of, you know, things going on Facebook, fake stories, fake news, fake all of this?
I don't know what they're trying to, of course you're right. I don't know what they're trying to regulate. I mean, it's interesting. Jeff may be able to weigh in the months ahead on that as well, because the deep fakes are so good now. That you could, you know, make it look like a politician or candidate was saying something or doing something that they didn't say or do. So,
and how do you know? Right? I mean, how can you tell the difference?
That's where
you can't.
I'd like to talk to somebody like Jefferson Graham or whatever, who might, you know, have an insight into if there's a way. And they're, in truth, getting so good at it that it may be harder and harder to establish whether or not it's real.
Next story is about little piggies. Yeah, not this cute one, unfortunately. The National Pork Producer Council says a new California law is already driving up prices. This new law aims to provide more comfortable conditions for pigs, as well as for chickens and veal calves. The council says prices
are
going up.
I just stopped you there, but I love the statement, more comfortable conditions. It's sort of like suggesting they are already comfortable. We're going to make them even more comfortable. Yeah, you know, they're already in business class. We're going to upgrade them to first class. You mean less torturous conditions? Yeah, that's what it should be like. It is so unspeakably awful, worse than any torture film you could imagine, and that these guys could sit in more comfortable conditions. Oh, it's crazy that they could even use the word comfortable in the context of what they do to these creatures.
You know, I put these stories in here on purpose because I know I could just sit back and let you go. But yes, and I also picked this picture because honestly, you're right, Mark. The pictures of what happens at these places is very disturbing. But the council says the prices are going up, despite the California Department of Food and Agriculture giving producers a grace period to the end of this year to improve the conditions for these animals. So we'll be paying more because of California's law driving up the prices here. And some might say that's a good thing. So
yeah, and there's a price on torture. I mean, it's unbelievable. But look, I think it's indisputable. You can say, yeah, if you can watch what they do and still eat it, then, you know, fine. But look, I'm not a jihadist on this, meaning I'm not here every day to hit people over the head with it. And I know that most everybody who watches this show, you know, you have your own eating habits. They don't, you know. But I just no one supports cruelty. No one. I mean, I don't think there's anybody on the show, regardless of your eating habits, that would be okay with the kind of cruelty that these creatures endure. So anyway, moving on.
Electric tugboat. Yeah, it's the nation's first ever all-electric tugboat. It's going to be operating in San Diego.
Wow,
Crowley Maritime Corporation.
Very cool. I think there's never been anything like that, Tony.
Never been anything like
this. Yes, exactly. Thank
That's
you.
applicable. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Crowley Nobody has ever put something like this together that I've ever seen.
No, I think it truly.
We've never seen anything like it before.
This tugboat is
there is nothing in our history that quite compares to this.
It's like the Tesla of the sea. Look at that. Crowley Maritime Corporation says this all-electric tugboat is called E-Wolf. It's under construction in Alabama. It should arrive early next year. This tugboat is in charge of moving other vessels around the port. Crowley Maritime says it'll replace one of 2 diesel-powered tugs that will eliminate the consumption of more than 30,000 gallons of diesel fuel every year. But first, it will need a power station to keep chugging around the 10th Avenue Marine Terminal. The San Diego Union Tribune says construction crews broke ground on a shoreside charging station this week, following another first. Just last month, the port became the first in North America to install 2 all-electric cranes to load off heavy cargo.
Wait a minute. They built the tugboat, the electric tugboat, before they built the power
Well, the power
station
construction is underway right now. All right.
Yeah, but the tugboat isn't. Okay, yeah.
The E-Wolf is not expected to arrive until early next year. So hopefully by the time it arrives, the power station will be up and running and ready to rock.
Yeah,
and this E-Wolf will be ready to go.
Might have built the power station before the tugboat got there, but all right, it's just
it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
Glad maybe they can get it all together on time. Yeah.
I thought you were going to say about this story, that is excellent. 30,000 gallons of diesel per year not used. And what do? Complain. I mean,
well, it is excellent, but I'm just suggesting that there was
this coming.
Yeah.
I really should.
Yeah, I don't know. That's right. Chit. Yeah, all right.
There is a drug shortage. Did you know that we're having a drug shortage?
No. What kind of drugs?
Well, let me tell you that it is pharmacists that are saying they are experiencing drug shortages. Nearly a third say the impacts are critical. That, according to a survey from the American Society of Health System Pharmacists, the shortages have led to rationing medications and delaying or canceling treatments and procedures. Chemotherapy drugs are in the top 5 categories of drugs with active shortages. Lawmakers say reliance on China for these drugs is making the problem worse, so they're pushing the Biden administration to bring production of some of these medications back to the United States. So,
well, we found out, and we've talked about it ad nauseum on this show, the supply chain goes back to China for so many things that it's related to medical supplies or pharmaceuticals, whatever. So, yeah, this country has to get back to self-sufficiency on these things. And honestly, the only reason it goes back to China is cost. That's the only reason. So it's cheaper to get the stuff made in China. And so as a result, all the stuff is made in China, and now even pharmaceuticals fall into the category of shortage. Yeah.
Right. Lastly, there are some new talks now between the striking writers and the big Hollywood studios. So more movement. This morning, the Writers Guild of America told its members contract talks resume tomorrow. It will be the first day of negotiations since the strike started more than 100 days ago. Last week, the WGA and the studios had a preliminary meeting, which marked the first sign of progress. And again, more negotiations now set for tomorrow. So maybe there's a little movement here. I don't know.
Would love it.
This report is crowdfunded, which means we rely on you to fund the show. If you are interested in doing so, you can find us at themarkthompsonshow.com. The Patreon link, PayPal link is there. And of course, the Super Chat is live here on the show.
And everybody who supports us, we scroll your name. At the end of this show, we never forget you. Every day we're grateful. Thank you.
And Mark sometimes cries. It's kind of a beautiful thing.
I do. I move to emotion, Kim, and I'm not afraid to be a man who's moved to emotion. I don't apologize for it.
I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shadow Stevens. This is The Mark Thompson Show. Keep it to yourself.
Who's Mark Thompson?
I want you to put it together for a guy who I adore. He's like a brother who I like to give a hard time to. Jefferson Graham. Come on, Jefferson Graham. Longtime tech writer for USA Today. He left, and now he's spread his wings across YouTube and across his Substack. A lot of great information. And Jeff, welcome. I watched you with interest on Nikki's show. And I will tell
There's never been anything like it, right?
There's never been anything like this.
I would say, Jeff, that you were really good, maybe a little too good. I oddly felt a bit, honestly, I felt like you were playing around on me a little bit. That's what I felt. Yeah, I felt like you're really bringing your A game over there. I wonder if you could just...
I want my A game here.
Thank you. Favorite. Me too.
Yes,
and not that you can't bring it to both places, Jeff, but let's not spread ourselves too thin, okay? I'm just saying.
Why are you yelling?
I'm just saying that... Anyway, it's great to have you here. And I want to talk tech with you before I get into, plugging all the stuff you do.
That's fine.
What do you... First of all, I wanted to ask you about something that I noticed, and that is that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but Zoom, which we have used and through the pandemic and have become used to, and we have Zoom meetings, et cetera, they've changed their terms of service to embrace this idea that our images, and it feels as though I'm wondering how much of that content that we don't intend to direct towards Zoom, but is just out there through Zoom, they can use or license. Can you speak to that?
It's already been fixed, sort of. But it was noticed that in the new terms of service, they could use AI to model their program and learn from our facial movements and our sounds and stuff like that until somebody noticed it and tweeted it or X'd it. What's the word?
Yeah, on the new X platform. So it's being rolled back. Oh, we lost Jeff?
I'm here.
Okay, there you are. So it is being rolled back, you were saying. Yes.
It's being rolled back, but I wouldn't trust them. So I would use Google Meet or some other service or Microsoft Teams. That's what I would do.
And you can record through some of those Microsoft Teams or Google Meet. That's one thing that Zoom offers you is a chance to record.
Yeah, I think in Teams you can. Google Meet, the last I looked, you couldn't. But if I know Google, you could probably do it by now. If not, there's alternatives, and we can come up with a whole bunch of them for next week's A segment. And I'll give you a lot of them.
I love it. I love it. And I love this also from David Odell. Mark seems genuinely annoyed. This doesn't feel like good-natured joking. Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I'll do my best.
I really... David, I think you're, that's right. I should just go with it. Yes, I'm genuinely annoyed. Now, I've said before, though, Jeff is a dear friend who has really squired us through the whole YouTube process. I couldn't really be ever too angry with Jeff because he's helped us so much on this show. So even if you were to do something quite egregious, and egregious is a ding word, I would not turn on him because of that. So let's talk about the Taylor Swift picks.
Okay. So really interesting, thousands and thousands of images were taken of Taylor Swift during her record, is it 6 nights in LA? And yeah. I got a urgent text message when I was on the road saying it's a matter of life or death. My daughter wants to know how to get great photos of Taylor Swift at the show. And I said,
it's a matter of life or death, is it? Wow.
Yeah. And as you know, you go to these shows and there's a performer miles and miles and miles away from you, and you cannot get a close-up. You can't, I mean, the pictures are generally terrible. So the first thing I said is just take pictures of the Jumbotron, which is what most people did. Right? Anytime you saw a picture, it was from the Jumbotron, because you're not going to be, unless you're front row seats, even if you're in the front row, you're still not going to be very close. So I told them that. And then I also said, take pictures of the scene. I want to see all the screaming people. I want to see the merchandise. I want to see the outfits. This is a lot more interesting to me than another photograph of Taylor Swift that cannot compare to a professional who's on stage or near the stage. Unfortunately, she did not do that. Other people did. Those are the really interesting pictures. And then the other tip is to shoot in RAW, which you can do on an iPhone. The 48 megapixel latest model iPhone, the 14 Pro, lets you shoot in RAW, which basically means a file that could be this big.
Yeah. He's Jeff, you're in and out today, but I will tell you that I read that on your Substack, and I love that tip. If you shoot in RAW, you can work with it in edit after when you get it. And the other thing I will say, and I completely agree, is you're not going to get any shot of the performer on stage. So show me the scene. I mean, it's extraordinary, that scene.
What can you tell us about the scene?
Thank you, Larry. They're a bunch of big screens, and those screens are filled with Taylor Swift. But there is a magic to the venue and the way they're playing it out. And I'd say there's never been anything like it.
There's never been anything like this.
And so I love what you've said, which is, hey, let us see the venue. Let us see that extraordinary setup. Everybody's got their phones up. There are all of these screens going. Somebody I know who went to Taylor Swift, I just talked to him last night, said the crowd was deafening. Just the sound of the crowd was truly so loud. Like, that's something that is interesting as well. I mean, interesting meaning it helps give you a texture for the event, you know?
Yeah, my friend's best picture was of his daughter and his two daughters, both singing their hearts out. That was the best shot.
So those are some tips on how to record it. There it is. Look at that. What is that, pyro that they have there, Tony? Is that, doesn't that look like
just what I could find real fast looking. So
no, but it looks like
it's an indoor show. Yeah, that's pyro. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tony.
Yeah. Gosh, it's
like I said,
crazy.
get the venue,
sorry I
get the
missed
stuff.
it.
Yeah.
I didn't get to go to the show. I would have loved to have been there.
I guess. I guess. I don't know. Yeah, you may be right. Anyway, it's like there is nothing in our history that quite...
There is nothing in our history that quite compares to this.
Now,
to this.
Tell me about the Venmo privacy nightmare. What is that?
Well, anybody who's used Venmo would know that...
Oh, he froze up again. But let me hint at it, or just fill it in until he clicks back in.
Internet.
I'm sorry, you dropped out a little bit. But this is, you don't realize that you're sharing, but you are sharing transactions. Isn't that what it is?
By default, all your transactions are public. So everybody who has a Venmo app needs to go in there and make them private. It's a pretty simple thing to do. I don't need anybody knowing that I paid Mark $10 for pizza, you know? But, you know, that's the innocuous one.
Sure.
Apparently, one of the Justice Clarence Thomas scandals was discovered through his Venmo. Or another thing happened with Biden, where they discovered something that he'd bought by just checking the public records until he disabled his Venmo account.
Well, I mean, there's a lot there. I mean, and, you know, Clarence Thomas is getting all those transfers.
I prefer the Walmart parking lots.
Yeah, well, you know, in the Walmart parking lot, you can do cash, but when you're out of the parking lot, you Venmo. And Jeff's right. The default is that it's shared. So if you look in Venmo, you see all of these different things. You know, I paid so-and-so for gardening. I paid so-and-so for pottery. It's sort of like weird. It's almost like it's like a Facebook, but it's all about money and transactions. It's kind of a window on what people are but, you know, you'll be part of that if you don't click it's so easy, as you say, Jeff, you know, to get off of that public square when it comes to Venmo and money transfers.
Yeah, and I don't need to know everybody's what they're spending money on. I really don't.
Yeah, right. I don't have an interest in it either.
Now, speaking of money, one
Yes,
last
sir.
thing we should talk about is the subscription prices going up, 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 up. Disney Plus announced yesterday they're hiking the rates on the is it the ad-free? Yeah, the ad-free versions, because they want everybody watching the version with ads, because now all of a sudden, can you believe it? They're getting more money from advertising on streaming than they are on network TV. They actually said that, okay? And so the rates are going up, up, up. The days of cutting the cord to save money are long gone, and we're just going to have to show them and really cut the streamers, I think.
I think you're right. I also think that this goes to what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago, or maybe it was last week. I forget exactly when, last week or 10 days. I was talking about the fact that the promise of streaming is BS. I mean, it really is. I mean, we all sort of got drunk on this promise of how great streaming was going to be, but you essentially have to sign up and pay a monthly for Disney Plus, Hulu, ESPN, Max, Peacock, etc. So now you're bringing them all in individually. That stacks up. And then, in order to bring them all in, you need some kind of internet connection, which you are paying for. So I don't know that you're saving money in any kind of substantial way. And then really to the point, they are now running ads on all of these platforms, which had been, including Netflix. I mean, they've been talking about ad-free, that's what you're paying for in a monthly. Now the monthly just gets you the privilege of watching programming on their various streaming platforms. And if you want to keep it ad-free, as you say, Jefferson Graham, you've got to pay an additional upcharge. I think it's a scam. So you say there has to be you really have to cut it. You're really good at this. You take the 7-day Disney Plus trial and then you get rid of it, right?
Well,
I mean,
you get rid of it on the
Yeah.
first day. On the first day. Yeah, immediately. And then you have to do a better job of just pruning, saying, well, what am I paying for? Do I watch this thing?
Sure.
I subscribed to Max, HBO Max, so I could watch Succession. Well, Succession's over. I don't need to have it anymore.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and I think this is what makes it harder. The streamers are getting hip to this as well. Not in the way that I think they will, which is to identify those people who have already done the trial and, who dance out after the first day, as you've just suggested, but by dropping weekly as associated with, it reminds me of network television, honestly, broadcast network television, where you'd watch the next episode of Desperate Housewives or whatever it might be. Now they do the same thing. They did the same thing with Succession. They did it with Hijack, the Apple Plus show. So you see that there's no way to do the trial period, cancel, then you do the trial period again the next week so you can watch it if it drops every Wednesday. You see what I'm saying? They're making it a little harder to dance in and out.
Well, you don't have to do the trial. I mean, you could, in fact, you can't. I mean, you could use every email address in the world, but they'll eventually catch up to you. But, HBO Max doesn't have they have Succession, but we watched it. So the next time there's a show, we just get HBO Max again. And then we have one trick. I'll give you my mother's trick, because she wants to watch Only Murders in the Building on Hulu, but she's not going to get it now. She's going to wait till the end and then get it, watch all the episodes, and then get rid of it. So that's how Judy Graham is doing it.
That is a great idea.
Ooh, it's a wild idea, but it just might work.
What I feel that idea doesn't take into account is the social aspects, the water cooler aspects of so many of these shows. So if you want to talk about it, in real time, that's what that idea doesn't include. But boy, I love that idea to save money. Now, quickly, you were in the West. I loved your stuff. I'm a devotee of so much of your stuff. And your pictures are stunning. Your videos are stunning. You were, and we talked about the monuments last time in South Dakota. That's one of them. We talked about the Crazy Horse Monument as well. From biker bars to open stretches, man, what great pics. So congratulations on all of that. Check it out on Photo Walks TV. We love you. Honestly, there's never been anything like your site.
There's never been anything like this.
That's the drop that Jeff hates so much.
I just say expand, add more. Just don't play the same one over and over again.
You think we should have, so you feel like we don't, that's the only one. We will try to get some other drops besides that one. All right, Jefferson Graham, everybody. Check him out, Jeff. Love you. We'll talk soon. Thank you, my friend. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Tony, if you could get us some additional drops, right? I would appreciate it.
All right, I'm on it.
I don't know why we don't.
Thanks, Tony.
I don't know why we don't have any drops on this show. The only one we've got is that never anything like this.
But, you've been playing the chit 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 one a lot, right?
No,
that's kind of taken over.
Oh, that's right, chit chit chit. Yeah. Well, that's a
chit chit.
Yeah, that's Kim's drop.
Probably a contender next year in the Marks Madness, I'm guessing, right?
I think it will go deep. I really do. I agree. I think it'll go deep.
2024.
Okay, that was my favorite.
That's the MAGA Mickey. MAGA Mickey. Trump 2024.
Trump 2024.
I love that one. I have to tell you, though, it's funny. When I saw the Trump MAGA Mickey, okay, we ran the story the other day, and I laughed just as I always do when I hear this.
2024,
and you see Mickey there with a MAGA shirt, and I'm like, Trump 2024, and a hat. I thought of how I laughed at Diamond and Silk and all the others in 2016 as they ramped up to the Trump charge for the White House against Hillary Clinton. I thought it was just so ridiculous, all of their stuff. You know, everywhere from Mexico is going to pay for it and all that. I thought this is just absurd. You know, it's crazy. And 2024. And so I laugh at this Trump 2024, and I'm thinking, oh, you're laughing at MAGA Mickey, dude. He could be like Diamond and Silk and a guest at the White House. I mean, Trump invited Diamond and Silk to the White House, Alex Jones to the White House, all of these other conspiracy theory, like weird ass edge of the internet kinds of Trump supporters to the White House. He had them there as guests at the White House when he got in. So even as I laugh at this stuff, I'm realizing that, you know, these august institutions that we talk about in Washington can be compromised and infiltrated by the MAGA Mickeys of the world.
That MAGA Mickey did have a sweet lifted truck, though.
Yeah, that's true. It was quite the truck. It is really true.
Thanks,
so
Tony.
Anyway, I am looking forward to the second hour. Kim, tell me what's up in the second hour, please, if you would.
Oh, well, we have David Katz in the second hour. That will be a great discussion. I consider him a great resource because, of course, with all the legal things going on in Trumpville, to have a former federal prosecutor be able to tell us about it is pretty amazing. And then we'll also talk the environment. And another really important thing this week, as we see drought areas and hurricane winds, create these deadly fires on my beloved island, we think this has to do with climate change, perhaps. We'll ask our lovely Belinda Waymouth with It's the Planet Stupid.
Yeah, that's right. That's a very good summary. Thank you, Kim. Yeah. I may turn to you regularly now for summaries on this show as to what's coming up. I rather like it. I do want to mention, because you mentioned Donald Trump, he was the last president before Joe Biden. I don't know if everybody caught it. Quite the ride. Now we'll talk about some of the legal cases against him. He has said, though, that he will not sign some GOP pledge to support whoever the GOP candidate is. No.
Of course he won't.
Yeah, he is saying no. Right. He doesn't. He's not on board with that. I mean,
no.
Exactly. So,
just like he wouldn't support whoever won the election, because obviously,
it's
no
not
matter
him.
the result, he started saying, like, what is it, 6 months before the election? If I don't win, it's rigged. Well, it hasn't even happened yet. You're already laying the groundwork for it's rigged. And people actually buy this?
Yeah. By the way, the fact that there's a pledge you have to sign to begin with is sort of like just bogus and high schoolish. I don't get that.
You know why there's a pledge? Because Bozo the clown over there, President Trump, decided not to do what Americans do, which is accept a free and fair outcome of an election. So now they probably have to. You should probably have to sign when you are the nominee that you'll support whoever is elected president too, and it's all because of him.
I'm sorry, Miss.
Don't talk to me that way.
I am really sorry, Mr. President. Get back to what you were doing, which is the
Saudi Arabia pays cash.
Yeah, that. Okay. Well, I enjoy so much our next guest, and before I bring him on, I want to ask you again, please, to hit the thumbs up and
smash it with your iron rod.
Smash it like a boss. And also, I'm going to ask you this. As we attempt to grow this show, please share segments or videos that you like, or you think there might be something particularly important or entertaining associated with. I wonder if you can share them on your social media, Facebook or wherever, or just if you just pass them on to friends. I mention it in the context of David Katz because I believe that David is one of the great assets that we have on this show, and I'm so honored that he spends his time with us at all on Thursdays, because it's a really, as I say, he's a jewel of this show, and I'm not exaggerating. You can find him on radio in London. You can find him on television in this country, and you can find him here on Thursdays. The former federal prosecutor, now working the defense side of the table, David Katz, everybody.
Yay!
Great to be with you guys.
Yeah, so good to have you in the mix, David Katz. So there's a lot going on with fake electors in that Michigan case, pleading not guilty, the Trump criminal trials. And I wonder if you could somehow prioritize and in some way bring some coherence to everything that's going on legally.
Well, feel free to ask me a lot of questions. We can do like I used to with Pat Thurston. We can do the lightning round. So whatever major or minor news story, let's do it.
Okay.
Well, I think that the most important thing from my perspective is that I'm beginning to be more sanguine about the trial in Washington, D.C. federal court going forward before the November election.
Sanguine is a ding word, and that's a big change for you then. You think that they actually might get this going?
Well, it is the combination of things that have happened here. I think the judge that they've gotten, who is definitely going to stay on top of it, I think that's one big factor. And I think that all the other cases have fallen in line, so nobody is actually taking that January, February time slot. And so that's the one that the special counsel has now asked for. He's asked for January 2nd. As I understand it, when they say trial would start, that would mean jury selection would start. This is a difficult, time-consuming case in which to get a jury from all the prospective jurors to make sure that they're not biased and to make sure they have the time for this trial. I mean, best case scenario, this trial, I think, has to last about a month. There are 3 overlapping conspiracies. There's a lot of potential witnesses. There are issues whether they'll take the 5th, whether they'd still be allowed to take the 5th because they may have waived their rights under the 5th Amendment by testifying either before the grand jury or in other places. And you can't say, I want to talk about the case, I want to talk about the case, and then suddenly say, I want to assert my rights under the 5th. You may have waived them by talking before under oath or not having asserted your 5th Amendment rights. So how those things turn out, you could have Mark Meadows as a witness, you could have Giuliani, or fighting his subpoena, so that's time consuming. You have Professor Eastman, he'll have a lot of arguments why he shouldn't have to testify, and if he does take the stand, think about it, each one of those will go through and explain why this was a good faith opinion, why they've done research, why, they'll try to exonerate themselves to the extent that they'll inculpate Trump. We'll have to see. Presumably they did some of that in the grand jury. I said before, I don't think any of those people will be charged before Trump is tried because it just adds more defendants. They will have their own reasons to delay. The fact that Trump is the sole defendant in this case is one of the reasons why it really has a chance.
Inculpate, I'll ding. I also wanted to mention that, David, because you're talking about the fact that they didn't name those others, and that's so critical. We were speaking the other day about the fact that the other reason might be that the narratives to which you refer, that is to say, the idea somehow that Giuliani could get on the stand or Eastman could get on the stand and begin to speak about sort of a narrative that Trump wants to get out there, the prosecutors don't necessarily want those narratives muddying the water. Could you speak to that?
Well, I think those narratives are going to muddy the water. It's just that when one of them has some reason why they're entitled to a delay or some issue that they want to litigate, which is separate from Trump's issues, it won't delay the Trump trial. Where things stand down in the Southern District of Florida, as long as those 3 are all joined for trial as they are right now, one of them has a huge inconvenience or has an issue that they want to litigate while they're joined, that gives Trump the delay that, of course, he's so eager to get. But what would happen when I say the narratives would be time consuming, this is not a short trial, even of Trump alone, because as I said, let's just take Meadows that he's cooperating. They'll go through all the things that happened with Meadows, and then there'll be all the cross-examination. That's just one witness. Then you have Giuliani on there. If Giuliani's really going to take the stand, there's this huge amount of evidence in the case. Remember, they raided his office, they raided his home. He's never seemed to have won a motion over those things. So that will be very time consuming, what happened between him and Giuliani. That's before you get to Professor Eastman. Eastman will explain, as he has in his bar proceedings, wait a second, I'm a lawyer, I'm a professor, I rendered an opinion, I read some cases, I went to the president, I said this is a viable theory. If the former president followed it, didn't follow it, and then this thing about, well, I think the Supreme Court would rule against me eventually 9-0. Believe me, there'll be a lot to be said about that by Professor Eastman. He may not concede that he said it. He may say why he said it, right, et cetera, et cetera. And then you have this Jeffrey Clark. He's another very time-consuming witness. He's going to say that, all the good reasons why he should have been allowed to take over the Justice Department, right? And then you get into all of these Trump loyalists who presumably will testify in Trump's case. I don't think they have anything to lose. They're hoping they're going to be in the new administration, especially more likely if Trump isn't convicted. So all that I'm saying is it's a very long trial. But once it gets started, let's say it really does get started. They pick a jury in January. They start the trial in February. Let's assume it's a 2-month trial. By April 1st, April Fool's Day, you could have our former president, found guilty of many, or for all we know, all charges. Then his sentencing is about 2.5 months away. And so the man could stand not only tried, found guilty by a jury, and sentenced by, the summer, by next summer. I mean, it really could happen. And the other thing is that I think you'll have a judge who, generally speaking, will rule for the government, because I think the government will be on firm legal ground. And that means that what's going to happen down in Florida, where the government says this is a disaster, we can't live with this, we have to go to the Court of Appeals and seek a reversal of what this trial judge did. I don't think that will happen, as I think more about it, in Washington, D.C. And that will be another reason why there won't be the kind of delay that I think is going to ensue down in the Southern District of Florida. So for all those reasons, Katz is
you're updating and modifying your original prediction?
Yeah.
But this is, again, just to remind everybody, this is the D.C. case, not the case in Florida. And we'll get to Georgia in a second. Go ahead, Kim.
I have a question about that, though, because the story I read this morning was that the prosecution is asking for trial to begin in January, as you mentioned, but the defense hasn't weighed in on what it wants. So could we see maybe the prosecution wanting a trial date to start in the first month of the year, but we know that the Trump tactic is delay. So could the defense come in and say, well, we're not going to be ready until the summer, or we're not going to be ready until next year? I mean, what guarantee is it that the defense isn't going to get its way on this?
Kim, they'll certainly come in and they'll say that. And with this very Trump-friendly judge down in Florida, she may buy those arguments. Or when push comes to shove and they say, the dog ate my homework, or it took me longer to do this, or it took me longer to do that, which are very viable reasons. I'm not poo-pooing them all. It's just because if it were the normal defense attorney, I would say, of course, it took the government 2-3 years to prepare this case, even though we all saw it, on January 6th, a lot of it, and in the days before and after January 6th, we saw it in real time with our own eyes. Trump saw it too. Why does he need, all this time to get prepared? But I certainly understand why in a normal criminal defense case, a lot of times the government does force the defense to a sort of a rush to judgment. They take years to investigate, which no federal judge seems to supervise or do anything about. And then suddenly the hammer comes down when the ball is in the defense court. And then suddenly all the government's delays become the defense's problem, and the defense is not, cut any slack when they really do have legitimate reasons why they need more time. You also run into the thing where I might be defending somebody. I'm really the person's only lawyer. I have cases like that where I have 1 or 2 lawyers. That's not Trump's problem. Trump can send an army of lawyers. They say he spent $30 or $40 million. So I think what will happen is he'll say exactly what you're saying, Kim. And I think the judge will say, no, you haven't proven it to me. You say that you need, 2 months to do research. How many lawyers do you have on the case? You have 2 lawyers on the case? You're Donald Trump's lawyer. You put 2 lawyers on this motion. Put 4 lawyers on it, okay? But this can get done. This can get done. This other thing can get done. It's not going to take that long. You want 2 months to do it? Do it in 3 weeks. And I want you to come into my court every single week, and I'm going to monitor the progress so that I see that these things really do get done. So if she stays on top of the case, this judge in Washington, D.C., I'm becoming more optimistic that it really can go forward. For this one defendant, not for, as I say, not for a lot of people, it would be really unfair to force them to do that. And of course, the government's narrative is going to be, he's got lots of money, he's got lots of lawyers, he doesn't actually have any other intervening case in which he has to go to trial during this. And if he has political things that he has to do, well, a lot of defendants have things to do. There's defendants who are running around, they're running a business, they're raising kids, they have medical problems, and the judge says 70 days, Speedy Trial Act, 70 days, counselor, 70 days.
It's interesting. The judge that you're talking about in the federal case in Washington is a speeded along, let's keep it moving kind of judge. But obviously, the Trump-appointed judge in Florida is sort of on the other end of that spectrum, it would seem, and that case can be slow-walked, it would seem, for a while, right, David? Just to review, that's that situation.
Yes. That case can be slow-walked, and it does genuinely have some difficult, thorny issues. And the national security thing lends itself to delay. And her ruling for the defense lends itself to delay because the government does have special privileges to appeal. And so if the government loses something like the motion to suppress, it can appeal immediately to the Court of Appeals, whereas the defense attorney has to just sit there, take all of his or her lumps, and then under what we call the final judgment rule, complain at the very end of the case. Now, to some extent, that will be Trump's situation. When I say that Trump might actually stand sentenced by, let's say, August or September 2024, it doesn't mean that he goes to the pokey. The reality is that generally speaking, white-collar criminal defendants do not. A lot of them are allowed to stay out pending appeal because if they're right on appeal, you can't ever give them the time back, especially if a guy gets a 2-year sentence. He has 2 years to get his appeal perfected. It's kind of a Pyrrhic victory to win your appeal and have already served the time. And so to avoid that problem, unless the person's a flight risk or a clear danger to the community, I know many of your people will say, Donald Trump, that's my definition. He's the picture boy for danger to the community.
Well, he does whip up a crowd. I mean, there's no question. And he does smack talk a lot of people. I mean, he's, you could argue that he's a dangerous, his rhetoric puts a lot of people in danger. You could argue it, and I think it's not, a completely hollow argument.
I'm just saying, as a federal criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor, this is not the sort of case, and Donald Trump's not the sort of person who would be remanded to custody like right at his sentencing. So the reality is that then he would bring his appeal, and his appeal might take a year or two. His appeal might go to the Supreme Court, and who knows, he might actually win a new trial in front of the Supreme Court or won some kind of victory. This is assuming that he doesn't become the president in 2024 and pardon himself.
Yeah. I'm going to run this out also just because you've said if he doesn't become the president, he does become the president, everything goes away. We'll get to the Georgia case in a second, but all the federal state cases go away. And all the other cases that are building against his henchmen go away too, Giuliani and Eastman, et cetera. If he doesn't win the presidency, now I want to ask a question that is asked by so many people all the time. So when could you actually see, after all of these appeals to which you've referred exhaust themselves, when could you actually see him held to account in the way that we hold drug dealers and mafiosos, et cetera, to account? When might that timeline actually end for him, the delays?
Well, the one where he's likely to have a sentence imposed first, I think, is the D.C. federal case. We're just talking about the federal cases right now. So he does not win, or some ally of his doesn't win, and they don't either pardon him and his cohorts or just tell the attorney general, I'm the president, unitary executive, stop prosecuting, drop the case, don't defend the motions. So one of those ways he wouldn't be held to account. A Democrat wins in 2024, he is held to account. I don't know, his appeal could last maybe 2 years, including go up to the Supreme Court, or the Supreme Court could turn it down if they didn't think there was an issue that merited review by the Supreme Court. So he could have the sentence imposed and actually start in about 2 years. If he's not the president, it's very likely that he would try to make a deal. He would say, I'll drop all of my appeals in the federal cases in exchange for, I'll be home on electronic bracelet at Mar-a-Lago. He'll be like Martha Stewart. Remember when Martha Stewart was on home detention and people said, my God, look at the size of that home. What kind of punishment is that?
Yeah.
Look at the size of that home. It's like an English lord's hunting preserve.
So no orange jumpsuit. That's what you're saying.
Unlikely an orange jumpsuit. And there are really issues. I mean, putting aside, the drollness of it, the parody of it. It's a really bad situation if Trump is actually in jail and attacked or something like that happens. So the reality, and his Secret Service, I mean, there's these jokes that he would either be in, he'd either go to Guantanamo. There's a lot of room there. That's the joke. The reality is probably his Secret Service detail would be there. The guy would come in from, 8 to 5, and he'd be the first, and then the next guy would come, and that would be like his cellie. That would be his. That would
become prison guards. Yeah.
Oh my God.
You don't want to
never been anything like this.
Yeah, right.
The people that think we look like a banana republic, and I don't agree with them. But having your ex-president not only in prison but attacked in prison, not a good look. So I think it's unlikely he'd be in anything approximating a real prison.
It may not be. I'd love to talk to you more about the Banana Republic part, particularly in relation to the election, the Gore election, because I felt that was a Banana Republic-like when they, stopped the voting and then the brother is, involved in,
Wait one second, Mark. Wait one second.
Okay.
Bush won the only election that counted, 5-4 in the Supreme Court. Clarence Thomas casting the fifth vote. What a great moment in American history.
I prefer the Walmart parking lots.
Yeah, exactly. Where's my Ginny Thomas?
I would like to thank a great woman named Ginny Thomas.
Yeah, exactly. God. She hasn't even been named in all of this, but, you know, she was clearly a part of this. She had many communications.
I love your headline, Thomas takes the country on a $270,000 ride. I love it.
Yeah, I think that was Kim who came up with that.
Was that your coinage? Fantastic.
Yeah.
Before we move on to Georgia, can I just ask one more question about the federal case?
Sure.
Is that okay? So this morning there's news that one of the men, the maintenance man at Mar-a-Lago, who was accused of helping try to delete this federal footage that the government had subpoenaed, his trial is being delayed because he can't find a lawyer. What do you think about that? I mean, is it against the rules for Trump to help his staff member find and then fund the lawyer for this individual? Or is it that no lawyer wants to touch this case with a 10-foot pole?
Trump can fine and fund the lawyer. There's usually a colloquy in court where the defendant is asked, you understand that your defense is being paid for by someone else. Your attorney was found by this person. Are you sure that you're happy with that situation? Because it comes up in federal cases that you might decide to take the case all the way to trial. You might decide to plead guilty, but you might decide to plead guilty and cooperate. You understand, Mr. Defendant, all of the issues that would be raised, and then the federal judge actually goes through in a personal questioning of the defendant. You understand this, you understand that. And a lot of people say, well, no, I guess I feel more comfortable having a different lawyer. We defense attorneys think that sometimes they do that to harass a really good lawyer. They just want, like David Katz, out of the case because they'd rather have somebody else opposing them. And so they have this huge hard time. But actually, it's sort of supported by some Supreme Court authority that they're allowed to do that. And a defendant who really does want to have that lawyer and understands the situation answers, no, I do want that lawyer. I understand I want that lawyer. And so I think that answers part of your question. The other part of your question, if nobody wants to represent him, this is a very interesting case. I mean, somebody who got paid would want to do it. The problem is that Trump is never, ever going to take the chance of paying somebody who's going to take a real independent look at it and say, well, thank you for the $100,000, Donald, but I've had a heart-to-heart talk with this defendant, and I got to tell you, it's really in his best interest. He and I have decided to rat you out. But thank you, Mr. Trump. He is not trying. I mean, neither are big corporations. Big corporations do not want to have their employees represented by people who are that independent either. And so that's sort of a problem with our system. But it costs so much money to defend yourself that someone like those two maintenance workers would either end up with a public defender or funded by Trump. Who else can, or maybe some pro bono? You know, there was the person who gave $10 million to E. Jean Carroll so she could pursue with her lawyers her civil litigation against Trump. There might be somebody who'd be willing to fund that lawyer for that maintenance man so that he would have a really independent lawyer. But I think for right now, those people are really under the thumb of Trump. And if you have the low opinion that I have of Trump, Trump may have something on them. You know, it's not like an omerta, but, you know, he had a lot of stuff on Michael Cohen. Remember, one of the reasons that Michael Cohen stayed loyal was that, you know, Trump had something on him. So I don't have any, I'm purely speculating, but does he have something on those other two? Either is he doing something? Does he have either a carrot that he's giving them or somebody near and dear to them? Or does he have some stick that they know that he'll hit him with if they decide to testify and cooperate against Trump? And of course, the prosecutors will try to think of what that is and see if they can counteract it. So there's kind of that spy versus spy thing going on right now.
I will ding colloquy. And
yes, I'm very unhappy with everything I've heard today on your show.
Okay, well, I will ding colloquy, and I will ding because of the demands from the crowd. I will ding omerta, too. I will ding it. All right. The Fulton County DA, Fannie Willis. Let's go to Georgia now, okay? Expected to seek more than a dozen indictments when she gets her case going, which is soon. I mean, meaning gets the indictments going. And it's reported she has been eyeing conspiracy and racketeering charges, which would allow her to bring a case against multiple defendants. Can you speak to that?
Well, it'll be interesting if all 10 or 12 of them are indicted together and they're all in the courtroom together. I tried a case years ago. My client was acquitted, and the guy the guy who had no chance of winning at all, he had like the guiltiest person in the room, and the others of us really had a chance of an acquittal. So the guy with the super guilty client, he gets up, closing argument, and he says, "Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right." You know that line. You all know that line.
Oh, yeah. Stuck in the middle with you. Right.
There you go. There you go. So I imagine that Trump's lawyer will steal that line and look around at Giuliani and Meadows and say something like, "Stuck in the middle with these guys. I don't know how. These are all the lawyers. I'm not a lawyer. I told me I could do this. I make the phone call. Meadows was on the line, this and that and the other thing." His undoing there is that he didn't know he was going to be taped. And so he thought that he could just deny what he said, but that Secretary of State down in Georgia taped it. And then what's totally outrageous is he basically threatened, you know, the way that Trump does, that way he talks like Michael Cohen talked about. You know, you could be in a lot of trouble. You know, you could be criminally in trouble for something like this. When you're the president of the United States, and at least people perceive that you control the attorney general and you control who gets prosecuted and who doesn't in America, whether that's true or not. Trump was, of course, availing himself of that perception in saying you could be in a lot of criminal trouble if you don't go along with my shenanigans. So it seems to me that with everything else that he did too, Trump is absolutely going to be found guilty in that case. He's not going to be able to point the finger or lay it off on other people or say he was following lawyers, because it's his voice. I mean, that's why that case is so devastating. It's his voice. The way he says, "Find me 11,780 votes," it's clear that he means concoct them for me. The count had been done 3 times. It had been redone. It had been certified. He knew very well it was like, commit this election fraud with me. And the good thing about it is it'll go, I think, now after all the other ones. And even if he's president, I think they'll stick to their guns down there in Atlanta, Georgia. And he'll have that huge headache and maybe a conviction down there, even if he is in the White House again after 2024. I know people get scared when I say that. I know people get scared, but he looks like he's on his way to the nomination. I mean, the New York Times says so.
Yeah, he'll certainly be nominated. I mean, it would seem he'll be nominated. Let me ask you about the pardoning that can happen. I know you can't get a presidential pardon if you've been convicted on state charges, but could he get a pardon from the governor?
I actually looked that up because it is interesting. And there's a Republican governor down there. You know, Kemp didn't really go along with him, but he'd get a huge amount of pressure, you know, like Ford did. You know, come on, let's move forward. Let's pardon the guy. He cannot do that on his own. Kemp, the Republican governor, cannot pardon a Trump if Trump were found guilty down there. There's something called the Georgia Board of Pardons. I also looked at whether he could commute the sentence. In other words, say, well, you stand convicted, I can't pardon you, but I'm wiping out all of your jail time. I'm commuting your sentence to no jail time. He can't do that either. So there's this board down there. Now, you could say that if you did it for all, you could stack the board with people who would vote in Trump's favor. But the reason it really doesn't work is that there's a procedure a little bit like California's. And the idea is that you don't really get pardoned the way the feds do. You get a pardon later on, after you've served your sentence. Well, what fun is that after you've served your sentence? Nixon and Trump didn't want after you've served your sentence. They wanted what they wanted, Nixon and Trump.
Oh, it's so great. I love our time. I have to excuse
not yet.
the witness.
No,
okay,
I don't want him to
more?
go.
Or what? Yeah.
I'll forfeit my newscast time in order to keep Katz on the air.
Well, the only thing I would ask is about, excuse me, but I would ask about the Michigan fake electors case, because they all pled not guilty. I wonder if you could just speak to that.
Well, you know, it's not usual that a person commits their first crime at 81, but this is the oldsters. These are the oldsters.
David is really funny today.
They're way outside the criminal demographics. You know, the teenagers. These are whatever the opposite of juvenile delinquent is. So you have all these, like, you know, super old people who are willing to, like, you know, sign whatever and do whatever to try to help Trump get elected. So it seems to me that if they can prove that these people were signing on knowing that they had no imprimatur from the legislature, they had nothing from the governor, even the Republican governors in those states, nobody agreed that they were an elector, even an alternate elector. They just signed on December 14th. And remember, guys, December 14th was a key date. That's the date by which they had to have the certificates. and then the certificates went off to Washington, and really the election's done. If there are certificates of enough electoral votes, it's really just a transmission thing and then a ministerial counting by the vice president on January 6th. So this guy, Chesbro, the one who's become noticed right now, the one who apparently worked on the Gore campaign too, and knows a lot about kind of how these things work. He said he wrote a memo. The memo's become famous in the last few days. It's been unearthed. And the memo says, you know what, just in case we actually get anywhere with this, we have to get this certification done by December 14th. And he's the one who then made the template. The template went to the 7 swing states. This has solved a lot of the mystery of why they're all look-alike templates and why they did these look-alike things. And what's wrong with all of them and what's potentially criminal is that they knew that they weren't just an alternate that was going to be standing by just in case they won some litigation. On top of that, by December 14th, they hadn't won any litigation. By December 14th, after the election, they'd gone 0 for 60.
Right. I mean, it was clearly a plan. It's just so interesting that they, I wonder if they're going to plead this out somehow. It doesn't look like they're going to, David. At least their initial push is to go all the way to the wall with it.
Well, people do that. A lot of cases settle on the courthouse steps. The immediacy of trial. Some people need to see the jurors actually walking in and sitting, the veneer persons when they walk in.
This is for
you
real.
You see them all in the jury box, and then you see them in the court, and then your client says, and you walk over to the prosecutor and say, okay, so what's behind door B? And if it's something that your client can live with. And that's probably what will happen with those folks. Some of them, they may want them to cooperate and see who told them. If they have like corroborating testimony that someone said, just sign here, it's absolutely clear we're never going to use this. It's just in the odd event that we win litigation between now, December 14th, we have to have it signed December 14th. So if someone told them a big tale like that, whether it was Chesbro or it was Giuliani or somebody like that, and you have corroboration, of course, you want to have something in writing because the other dude did it or the other dude told me to do it. If I'm representing Giuliani, which I'm not, you would say, yeah, that's easy to say now. Right? That's easy to say now, but come on, where's the proof that Giuliani really misled them? They're the ones who signed the certificates.
So many moving parts and only more to come,
I have a last question for the witness, if I could.
We are a little behind, but yes, I will permit it.
Okay, so let's go back to Georgia. And the prosecutor in the case, Fani Willis, I guess Trump put out a campaign ad where he just kind of beats her up verbally.
He calls her a racist and
calls her a racist, says that she had an affair with a gang member, claimed that she served her job during a rise in violent crime in Atlanta. And she's told her staff, listen, you say nothing. You don't respond to it. You don't do anything. Is it because it's an unprofessional look to respond to this type of business? Or is it because she's going to say, I'm going to speak back where it counts, which is in court, and I'm going to wipe the floor with this guy? What do you think her thought process is on that?
Kim, the latter, but she would be playing into his hands if she got into a tit for tat, because he's in a world of hurt. And if she gets into this battle back and forth, he's going to say, see what she said. I want to recuse her. I want somebody else to start the case. And the case does hinge on having her. Can you imagine having somebody else or having like a totally different office in Georgia? They send this to some other place that's not Fulton County. Some other county would have to try to get up to speed. So she's got to really keep her powder dry and not get into a fight with him. But it is repulsive, what he put out. And let's all remember that there's credible evidence that he cheated on every single one of his wives. And there's no evidence that Fani Willis did anything wrong. But, he's willing to burn the forest down,
Sure. As you say, he's up against the wall. He's desperate. So that's exactly what he's doing. I think that's a great way to put it, burn the forest down. David, so appreciate your expertise. You can hear David, of course, if you listen to BBC Radio in London. Let's bring
Don't
them
go all the way to London. You can listen to Mark Thompson. Don't go all the way to London, guys.
But if you're in London, he's always a fun listen. And we love having you here. David, thanks so much. David Katz, everybody.
Yay.
Right on, David. Right on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I've told you it's never easy being in this business.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Well, thank you, everybody who has smashed the like button. And if you haven't smashed the like button, now how dare you? Smash it like a boss.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
I also want to thank everybody who supports this show. You know, this is a homegrown show. And the community of people who not only watch, but support us monthly, they are the straw that stirs the drink. So I appreciate that support, and we try to honor it every day with a scroll of people who support us, all the Patreon supporters, all the PayPal supporters. If you want to be one of them, you can reach us at themarkthompsonshow.com, and there are click-throughs to both Patreon and PayPal and whatever you can spare for the price of a Starbucks coffee a week. You can toss us $20, and that helps us make payroll and help make improvements. You notice we're dropping more videos, and we're trying to get word out about the show, and there are more improvements to come, and there's more evolving to come. So all of these things, I appreciate your support around. In fact, I have one thing before I bring Belinda on. I don't know if you saw it, but the people at Coachella Valley Coffee, which is the official coffee of this show, and I've told you before, you should go to their website, and what you'll see at Coachella Valley Coffee is all these different kinds of coffee. So I've told you, my favorite, which is Ocotillo Espresso. That's one of them that I love, but I like dark, rich coffees. You may like a lighter, more medium type roast. So whatever you find there at Coachella Valley Coffee, they'll give you the discount. You want to buy a bunch of stuff, and they have teas and all kinds of other stuff there, 10% off with Mark T at checkout. So CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. When you check out, use the code MARKT for 10% off. But what I wanted to mention to you is that so many of you have been so great about going to Coachella Valley Coffee. Again, they're a hand roasted is what their beans are. I mean, imagine that in this world of, everything mechanized, and they really take pride in that coffee at Coachella Valley Coffee. They reported, and they wanted to put the shout out to all of you who did order. They wanted to put the shout out that they had their biggest online order week in the history of the company.
Yes.
As a result of this audience.
Right on.
Yeah. So if you, here it is. Let me just read this to you quickly. From Coachella Valley Coffee, a big thank you to Mark Thompson and his amazing listeners. Because of you, we've had our busiest week ever for online coffee sales. So there you go. Yeah. Use that discount code, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com, and you'll get 10% off. And as I say, find the coffee that's right for you. I mean, it doesn't have to be the coffee that I love. It might be the coffee that you love. There's so many different kinds. And it's, these are sustainable farms, often run by women. They support women who run these businesses, and they even give them seed money to get these farms started. I just think it's a great organization, Coachella Valley Coffee. And for those of you who have already ordered there, I've already received, and I'll maybe, in the future, next week or something, I'll read you some of the great reports. All of you agree, as I do, that it's a remarkable coffee. And for me, it's the best coffee I have ever tasted. Again, CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. And when you check out, use the discount code MARKT for 10% off. All right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
What we like to do on Thursdays is check in with this troubled planet. And we do it in a segment we call It's the Planet, Stupid.
The planet Earth.
Some call me nature.
I am very passionate about the planet
Earth. A living, breathing planet capable of sustaining whatever life forms we see fit to deposit on it.
Spock, judging by the pollution content of the atmosphere, I believe we have arrived.
It's the planet stupid. No. It's the planet stupid.
Our guide for It's the Planet Stupid is Belinda Waymouth. Belinda, welcome.
Thank you so much. Good morning, all you mad coffee drinkers. How are you?
Yes, the crowd is coffee and tea, whatever it is. We like a hot beverage in our hand.
Yes,
or a cold beverage.
I'm a teetotaler. I'm all about tea.
Tea is really, that's, Courtney does tea. She loves the tea, and they've got great tea. They have special bags and all the things that they send when you order the tea from Coachella Valley. Anyway,
Okay.
Look, I know the news is desperately bad out of Hawaii. I know these extreme weather events are part of a constellation of things that we see coming together that may reflect much of what we talked about with the climate crisis. There is good news. And, you know, when you first started your relationship with us, and we've had you on regularly, you were focusing on good news, and I still think you do focus on good news. But, I mean, the bad, desperate news crowds out the good news often. I'm wondering, at minimum, I want you to get to the good news, because you sent me some good news out of the Philippines. And yes. I wonder if you, maybe we can start there and we'll work back to some of getting back to this country where the news isn't so good.
Yes, yes. Well, what L'Oreal just announced this week for the Philippines is amazing, because what they're pledging to do is actually 5 times more impressive than what the Philippines, you know, I'm always talking about this thing, EPR, extended producer responsibility, meaning that if you're the company that makes all the plastic packaging that then becomes plastic waste, you have to be responsible for its recycling. You can't just hand that over to the consumer and municipalities, and particularly not in these island and ocean nations, the Philippines, Indonesia, all these places where we've been sending our recycling. They don't have robust waste management. They can't deal with their own plastic trash. So for us to think that they can, you know, recycle and should be responsible for our waste, absolutely no way. We need to keep it onshore, all our own plastic here. But L'Oreal is an amazing company because they've been very concerned about this for a long time. And they're huge. You know, they're Maybelline, they're Kiehl's, they're all these other, you know, have all these other smaller companies underneath them. But their move, I just have to say, classy, completely classy. So Philippines EPR Act of 2020 was asking for corporations to make sure that 20% of their waste, that they were going to reduce, you know, 20% of their waste by this year, by 2023, and then go down 10% every year to, you know, a total of 80%, you know, reduction. And L'Oreal just announced at the beginning of the week, we're not going to do 20%. We're going to go for 100% this year.
That's so amazing.
Yeah, it's really amazing. So, you know, that's their photo. And of course, they're not being covered by the mainstream media because it would see, you know, be giving them free advertising. But I got a newsletter about it and I was just like, you know, this is fantastic. You know, by 2025, you know, 100% of all their plastic packaging will be refillable, reusable, recyclable, or compostable. And they're already doing a thing where in the Philippines, because of this extended producer responsibility and having it be this circular model where you're not putting waste into the environment, they're using recyclable plastic that is recycled with enzymes, not with chemicals. They've reduced the amount of weight in their plastic packaging. Like, why do you need to have this great big thick, you know, bottle for shampoo when it would work just as well and not be flimsy with half the volume of plastic? Their cardboard, they've reduced that. They're making sure that it's sourced from, you know, ethically, you know, ethical forests. I mean, I would love it if it all came from recycled paper and it was brown. But, you know, the fact is they are saying we're going to only use, you know, sustainably forests, you know, produced paper. They're also not laminating their cardboard anymore. Now, as soon as you put a layer of laminate on cardboard, basically that's a layer of plastic. It's not recyclable. So they're really raising the bar and really showing what a corporation, a big, you know, international, you know, multinational company can do when it wants to do the right thing by the planet. I think it's fantastic.
It is fantastic. And as you say, they're a big multinational corporation. And so we're used to big multinational corporations having their way with the planet without consequence, buying and selling politicians and decision makers. And here you have, as you suggested, an immense company that's doing the right thing. And so we cut back to New Jersey
Oh, we have to go there already.
I'm sorry, but that's the yin and the yang of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, this story out of New Jersey, it's so disheartening because 3 years ago, when Ørsted, who's this Danish multinational, first arrived in New Jersey 3 years ago to say, hey, we've got this offshore wind project, Ocean Wind 1. They were, warmly welcomed because they were going to be creating hundreds of jobs. And, New Jersey is a blue state, and they are committed to reducing their emissions by 80% by 2050. And these offshore wind projects, this Ocean Wind 1 is sort of the first, and then there are, 4 others that are, slated. And Biden, by the way, signed off on Ocean Wind 1, just last month, just July. But since
that's something you should just say. That's the largest federal offshore wind project to get approval, presidential approval. So it's it's huge.
Yes, because he, the thing that he said, when he came into the Oval Office, we had, I still can't believe this number, Mark. We had 7, less than 10 offshore wind turbines, and he straight away said, we're going to increase that to 1,400. And a lot of them right now are happening on the East Coast. But what happened was, first of all, this town, Ocean City was like, which is, touted as being America's greatest family resort. I think that annually, their actual population, I think, is less than 100,000. They get 10 million visitors a year. So
we used to go there every summer as a family. Grew up in Washington, D.C., and that was it, going to the beach at Ocean City. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so, tourism and the coastline, super, super important to them. One of the things that I really want our listeners to know, that off the bat, New Jersey is having double the rate of sea level rise than anywhere else in the world right now. So to protect that coastline and their tourism industry, you would think that they would be embracing the renewable energy. But, if for a blue state, this is a very red, little enclave. And what's happened is it's gone completely political. And now there's this huge opposition that's happening there. It's mounted by this local group, Protect Our Coasts, New Jersey. And, they are enormous. They're going to be 15 miles offshore. There's talk of having them further out there. But what this group, which is local citizens, and they've got, hundreds of thousands of, people signing on, saying, we don't want this. But the fact is that they are being funded and schooled in talking points by these dark money, anti-renewable energy, pro-fossil fuel groups, one of them being the Caesar Rodney Institute. And so now you've got local people out there claiming that the wind turbines are going to kill whales. There is absolutely no marine scientist, no scientific research that says that this is true, that any of the noise coming from them can do that. So everyone is saying they're going to kill the whales, they're going to kill the whales. And they've got this incredibly well-funded legal fight in place against Ocean World 1. Their plan, part of the plan for their strategy is they want this to be a blueprint for other groups to fight offshore wind. And, it's crazy when you let these other groups come in and really influence you with their propaganda against a project that's actually going to help with the sustainability that you need for your coastline to be the profitable money-making place that it is, and to get, this incredible amount of tourists. I mean, once your beaches disappear under the, the sea, that's, going to go away. So they're saying things like, the wind turbines are going to be super visible. They've got these doctored photographs showing the wind turbines as more visible than they are.
Harry Joe Jim Bob is asking, and just to this point, how far offshore are the wind farms within eyesight? The answer is no. They're 15 miles offshore, is what I saw. Maybe Belinda has
15
more.
miles. So you're not going to see them. Yeah. They've also got this lie that Ørsted, this Danish company, has been given permission. I mean, they don't say by whom, to kill hundreds of marine animals. Well, that's not true. I mean, the amount of sort of red tape that these renewable projects have to go through to get greenlit is
right.
It's huge. And then one of their lawyers, this one was the one that really I couldn't believe. So one of their lawyers is even claiming that there's going to be no cut in emissions when millions of homes are being supplied with renewable energy from this offshore wind project, even though all the maths so far shows that it's going to be a 7.2 million metric tons reduction, per year in emissions. He did his own math and came up with actually, no cut in emissions. So
essentially, the community has sort of bought the BS that has accompanied this dark money campaign, and they actually there's a huge legal campaign as well, because they need additional approval in New Jersey, don't they? I mean, they got the federal approval, but they need additional approval that's being contested. That's what you're talking about when you say it's a blueprint for the future. I mean, future protests. I mean, against it.
Yes. That you first of all, you mount a grassroots effort with local people saying, you're going to destroy the beauty of our coastline. You're going to kill our whales. It's going to be terrible, terrible, terrible. And then the talking points that they're getting, I mean, they're just wrong. And we have these think tanks, these fossil fuel, profit-based think tanks that are doing everything they can to fight these renewable energy projects. And, as we keep saying, I bleat on about it nonstop, but, this is go time. This is when we need to really seriously be reducing our emissions, which we're not doing. I mean, look at these fires in Hawaii. I mean, Hawaii used to be, this dense, lush, tropical rainforest that didn't burn. And now there are droughts. You've got invasive species grasses, which, burn. You've also got, because of the drought, the vegetation on the Hawaiian Islands drying out and burning. And last night it was 6 people dead. And then we wake up this morning and it's 36 people dead. And there's one story of a man who sort of said to his wife, okay, we've got to get out. Let's jump in the truck. And, he wanted to stay and save his building. And by the time they were in the truck, they turned around, his business was already on fire. I mean, people were running into the ocean to save themselves and being rescued by the Coast Guard. It's bleak and terrible, and it's almost incomprehensible that all of these things are happening and that we're not just having this massive pivot and embrace of renewables. I mean, this year, the production of oil in the US is going to beat all records. It's going to be 12.8 million barrels per day. That is higher than the record of 2019 when Trump was our president. Saudi Arabia, just for comparison, they're at 10 million barrels a day. We're going to be 12.8 million barrels a day, under a Democratic president who cares about the environment. I mean, we are not moving fast enough. And I can't say that often enough.
Yeah. I mean, of course, I agree with you. I just think there's an all-you-can-eat quality to our policies, and I think there's even a greater stubbornness on the part of other nations to give in at all to a strong environmental movement and to get away and, essentially accelerate the transition from fossil fuels. I mean, I think it's just a very important thing to do. I say all you can eat, meaning at the same time that the Biden administration, as you've heard Biden speak, I think passionately and aggressively about green energy, he also okays a bunch of drilling in pristine land. So I'm not completely, I'm a tree hugger. So for me, I really want zero additional development in that area on dirty energy. But that said, I think that there are ways to transition off of it, and it's an existential threat. So anyway, I love having you on because it lets me make speeches like that one, Belinda. I really do. I do appreciate that story though, because it is. I think it's hidden in the pages of so much of what's going on. The fact
story out of the Philippines.
Yeah, the story out of the Philippines is terrific, and it's completely hidden. And I just posted it to my Twitter feed. And I think even the Jersey story about how Ocean City, you know, they approve this wind thing. It's all talked about. But now look at how all this dark money is derailing it. I started this show with the derailment of the transit bills that were going to regulate the way toxic energy is transported, literally leading to a derailment where the lack of regulations in that Palestine, Ohio, and other examples. And so you really see the power of money. And it's a very, it's a saddening thing, but it's a fact. But I love that that L'Oreal is taking the first steps, and maybe there are some good corporate citizens like L'Oreal that will help lead the way.
Well, you know what's also really important about that L'Oreal story is that, you know, that is happening because the Filipino government put in place the framework and said, we are going for extended producer responsibility. I mean, I don't know if you've been to any of the beaches in that part of the world. I was in Indonesia a few years ago, and actually, you know, we were there to document the plastic pollution. And I mean, it's unbelievable. You go to, you know, the island where the Komodo dragons are, and everyone's talking about, oh, we're going to go see Komodo dragons. Well, the first thing you see is a beach absolutely covered in plastic. You know, you're in this gorgeous part of the planet, and the beaches are covered in plastic. It's washing by you in the ocean. And, you know, I'm a surfer, so I see more and more plastic trash, particularly in the summer when I'm in the ocean. And, you know, but to go back to, you know, the Philippine, you know, their government put in place, you know, this policy because they want to end plastic pollution. And we can do the same with renewables. There is a blueprint we should be following, not these people who are fighting, you know, wind turbines off the shore of the Jersey coast. That's just insanity.
You can find her on social media across all the platforms at Belinda Waymouth, Waymouth, and you can find her here on Thursdays with It's the Planet Stupid. Belinda, thank you. Appreciate it.
My pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
More
It's the Planet Stupid. No, it's the Planet Stupid.
Next time, only on the Mark Thompson Show.
Right on. A lot of reaction. I don't even know if some of these facts are true, so I'm not going to necessarily post them. But climate change has been happening for some time, 50 years. Right, okay. I mean, seriously, dude? I mean, and I love you, Gordon, but come on. The climate change has been happening argument? I mean, really, you think that there's I mean, the scientific reports are replete with evidence of man-made climate change. So we know that pulling back on these fossil fuels will help. But listen, to me, it doesn't matter, okay? I think I have a very grim, bleak view of humanity and what we're actually capable of, and I think there'll always be problems moving forward because we have a death grip on fossil fuels. But hear me out. That doesn't mean that I'm totally bleak. I agree, Mark, says Gordon. But I do think, obviously, we've populated the planet and we have demands on the planet that are unprecedented. Yeah, I might say that there's never been anything like this.
There's never been anything like this.
And what I also would say is that there's greed and there's just a reluctance to do anything because, as I say, the power of dark money and fossil fuel money is felt all across the world. But that doesn't mean that we can't do things incrementally. And the final thing I'll say to you is the detoxification of the environment is a real possibility. Take out some of these toxins. So if you don't buy into, it's too big a problem, global, it's just too much, at least let's get the toxins out of the air, the water, and the soil, as best we can anyway. Let's roll back the cancers and the emphysemas, etc. That's where I am on that stuff. So, speech over.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Mark Thompson, 2024.
2024. Yeah, why can't I get a Mark Thompson 2024 drop?
I mean, sometimes you go off on these, you get up on the soapbox and you say something like that, and I just feel like, it's an advertisement for your candidacy, really.
Yeah. Well, thank you. I like it. And sometimes you feel as though that. Yeah. Sometimes I should just be quiet.
Never.
No, sadly, we've wrapped almost another week. We only have one more day. I thought that the Talk To A Rando worked out. He is apparently a fan favorite, Jimbo, as he's called.
Yeah, he's awesome.
I call him Jim, but I guess he's been on Nikki's show, etc. Mm-hmm. But he worked out to kind of get us kicked off. Now, there is another Rando waiting in the wings, and we'll have him on probably next week. I think is probably going to be the easiest time to have him on. And if you want to join us, you can reach us easily. The Mark Thompson Show at gmail.com, and you can be added to the mix. I had so much still to tell you, and guess what? I'm going to tell you about it tomorrow. I have stories about evangelicals. Yes, I know you love your evangelicals, everybody. I have a rich law and disorder, and I have a rich that's rich. I don't know how we're going to do it tomorrow. Add to that, Jim Avila, Michael Shore, Michael Snyder on what to watch, movies, and the like. And Friday Fabulous Florida. So all of that awaits you tomorrow. If you haven't yet smashed the like button, that's jam-packed.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Smash that like button on the way out. Smash it like
with your iron rod.
I am humbled by your love.
I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry.
I'm not gonna cry, but I am humbled.
I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry.
All right. Coming up, the people we love.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
John Daly joins Kim
all the time. Bye-bye.
For the After Party Live now over on their channel. We'll see you tomorrow. Till then, bye-bye.